along. I am Dr. Marianne Trent, a qualified UK clinical psychologist. It is so lovely to have you here. I'm just looking at where the comments are so that I can see when you join, so that I can see if you've got any questions. Before we get going, just whilst I allow for people to join us, I will tell you a little bit about why we are here. So in the UK, and in fact probably internationally as well, it's really tricky to advance your professional career in psychology. Not an easy thing. And if you don't have access to any qualified psychologists or anyone you know who's in this career field, then you might have questions about how it all works. And yeah, who better than to have a clinical psychologist on hand to answer your questions. So yeah, I am here to answer any questions you've got about kind of applications, about how you can do something, how you can phrase something, you know, what sense to make of whatever, what to do about, I don't know, the reference or, you know, the structure, you know, whatever part of your psychology career dilemma you are at, I'm here for you. And we are, of course, at the moment in the UK in application season for the doctorate in clinical psychology and for the counselling psychology doctorate. So I'd love to know, I can see here that the lovely Amelia has said a big hello from LinkedIn. If you're watching from YouTube or you're watching from Facebook, I would love to know that you can hear me so that I know it's coming through okay. Let me know any questions you've got, anything I can support with. Let me know what would feel like a good use of your time by the time we finish. I'm here till 7 p.m. or, you know, until we run out of questions, whichever comes first. Yeah, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. So I work now in sole private practice. I was working in the NHS until 2021. And before that, since 2019, I'd been doing a couple of days a week private practice and 3 days a week NHS. I was previously 5 days a week until I had my first baby, and then I went down to 4 days a week when I had my second baby. When I first qualified from my clinical doctorate, I worked in CAMS for almost 4 years, and then I moved and worked in adult mental health in a service that was closer to home. I would say that I now specialise in kind of grief and trauma, and whilst I am still qualified to work with children and young people, and I do create content for them and about them on YouTube, I predominantly now do work with people over the age of 18 because, you know, for me working remotely, I think that that feels like a better and probably a safer fit. Okay, have we got any questions? Do let me know. I know, of course, that when people are watching on YouTube or wherever, it can take a little minute to come through to me. So yes, I know that you might be like, I've asked a question, she can't see it. It does just take a little moment for that to come through. Hi, Coach Prindy, nice to have you here. Yeah, people are so curious, and I think people can be so quick to invalidate themselves, to not be on their own team. I've literally just finished recording a hook for a podcast episode that I've got coming, which is features a slightly older applicant and someone that's kind of done a complete career change. So I really do try to create content for the narrative of it's never too late, and, you know, we should always be able to make ourselves, you know, thrive, you know, whatever that looks like. And I know, you know, sometimes it's not been possible to really focus on yourself at particular times of your life or your career, but there's always time, hopefully, to scratch those little itches, things about, you know, you believing, rightly so, that you do deserve to be happy. So I know that this year round in the doctorate in clinical psychology applications, some of the questions have changed ever so slightly. There's now specifically more of an emphasis on personal life, which before had been something for you to kind of do for yourself, make your own decisions. But this year, there's definitely, it's mentioned more, that you might be able to reflect on things in your personal life, which demonstrates why you are a good fit for clinical training. And yeah, like there isn't a one size fits all approach to filling in your clinical psychology application forms. But what I would say is it should read as if only you could have filled that particular form in. I really don't want buzzwords. You see them thrown in like bingo terms, just like chuck, chuck, chuck. I really don't want that for you. I want everything to feel like it's authentic to you, that it's on that form because you've had some kind of breakthrough moment in therapy or in your supervision session or, whilst writing your reflective journal. And I want you to really be joining up those dots, not just chucking in things willy and indeed nilly. Make it earn its place. Take hold of things confidently and competently is what I would say. Okay, I've just noticed we've got a question come through here. Anna, thanks for joining us, Anna. Come to the end of my MSc conversion and have applied for 2 research assistant and 2 psych assistant posts and not heard anything back. It's very tempting to go back to some teaching roles, which is what I know and spend the first 20 years of my career doing, but I want to prioritize getting on to the doctorate and getting clinical experience. Do you have any advice for other roles I could go for? I've worked for a year as a therapeutic residential. It's just clipped you off the end there. Feel free to come back and finish the end of that, Anna. But what I would say is, well done, you. What I would also say is, I know it is so soul destroying. I know that. I get that. To fill in a form. And what we do is when we see a job advert, I used to do this. I used to do it with hot boys too. We begin to imagine this future for ourselves. And we imagine ourselves getting that job. And of course we know that we think we know that we'd be a really great fit for that job. But of course we can't know how experienced other people will be who are applying to that. And I know that time and time again, I was coming up against people who already had paid assistant psychologist roles. What I would say, Anna, is just really go over the person spec again and make sure that you are covering all of the bases or as many of the bases as you can. Make sure that you're being explicit about it. I literally used to copy and paste the person spec and then kind of change it all to make sure that I was addressing each point, because you can't score for what you haven't put on your application. I also know it's really soul destroying to apply, to have your heart in that, and then to hear nothing. What I would say is it really depends how long ago it was that you applied. Often on perhaps an NHS job, it will say when the closing date is, and it might even tell you when the interview date has been. And it might well be that what you're saying is the dates have passed and you didn't get any notification. Have you got anyone who can review your applications? People are often telling me that sometimes they might need to apply for 60, 70, 80 roles before they get a chance to have an interview or before they get a chance to get offered a job. And I know that feels soul destroying, especially if you're already an older applicant. I get that. And, with kind of, I don't recommend honorary work or voluntary work, but of course I also understand that if you've got overheads, if you've got young people or whatever, it's even more difficult to do that. And that's why, I just think they should probably be scrapped, to be honest, but that's a whole other issue. So I get it, Anna. I get that this is really soul destroying. I get that. What I would say is try not to give up hope. And you mentioned there that you had spent the first 20 years of your life doing teaching. And let's not forget that your teaching is highly relevant. It's obviously not clinical work, it's teaching work, but it's with a clinically relevant population a lot of the time. So let's not think that you're unskilled. Let's not think that you don't have an amazing amount to add to this profession of ours, because you do. I guess it might be helpful for you to reflect on why for you it's clinical, not education psych. It did used to be that to be an ed psych, you had to be a qualified teacher. It's not that case anymore. And please don't think that I'm telling you that you should be doing ed psych. I'm not saying that, but making a useful kind of use of your reflective diary to reflect upon those choices and to really make sure that you know and can put across why it is important for you to do clinical rather than education is all really useful. And even in your forms, so when you're applying for stuff, those are useful reflections to make as well. Let me just flick through, see if I can see the second half of what you said. I can't see it there, Anna. I hope you may be still here or watching on replay. In terms of other roles, I don't know if you have caught up with, just drop everything on the floor, the Aspiring Psychologist Collective has lots of great ideas for roles that people have been successful in. Yeah, you know, support worker, sometimes I think they're called support time recovery workers, even healthcare assistants. You might even be able to do that on the bank to kind of get a variety of access to different clinical areas. Research assistants are fantastic experiences, but I of course understand that can be equally as challenging to get experience for. But please do check out the episode. There's a series of episodes aimed at assistant psychologists or becoming them on my YouTube. So if you were to go to my YouTube, which is Dr. Marianne Trent, and then click the playlists, and then there's one, I think that says assistant psychologist. So if you click on that and then make sure that you watch the episode with myself and another ClinPsy, where we're talking about basically how to get shortlisted. So do watch that one, Anna, and I hope that you find that helpful. Hello to you. Thank you for joining us. Amelia, I'm applying to the DClinPsy for the second time this year. I have many ideas and reflections, and I'm struggling to put them into my application. I've sorted my reflections into assessment, formulation, intervention, and service development. Where do you advise I go from here? So, my advice to you, Amelia, is take out your little phone. I can't find mine. Don't know where mine is. I think it's probably on the windowsill. And get out your WhatsApp. You might have WhatsApp. Message yourself. Get your voice note function. Ask the questions to yourself, and out loud I would answer the questions, okay? And I would ask yourself the question, what excites me about psychology? Why did I decide I wanted to become a trainee clinical psychologist? And I would just allow yourself to just speak. And to begin with, you might find it really awkward. You might be like, I feel like a fool. But you might just get like a useful thread where you can start to build something more. So this is advice for Amelia, but it's advice for everybody. It might give you just a little bit less overwhelm than if you try to just sit down and go, right, okay, I've got all the files sorted. I've got my cup of tea just here. I've done my hair. I've done everything. I've got my little journal here. Now I'm ready. And then you're like, I do not know where to begin. So I think just by trying to activate your go in a different way by speaking it aloud can just give you another avenue in. That's certainly something that I find very helpful. And when I'm doing kind of one-to-one work with people, looking at coaching, looking at kind of helping them optimize. Sorry, I realized I've probably just smacked my mic. Sorry about that. Looking at helping them optimize their form or really getting a sense of them into their form. It's often a question I ask of them. Tell me about yourself. Why psychology? Tell me what makes you unique. And so once you have those answers to those questions, it can kind of help you to make sure that you're putting yourself in the form. Yeah, it sounds like you've got a little bit of overwhelm going there. So maybe don't think about, so you said you've sorted it into assessment, formulation, intervention, and service development. Maybe just take the pressure off yourself to be able to get all of that into your application, and just focus a little bit on initially getting yourself into that form. Thereafter, you can refine it. So I would say start big and get smaller. Get like reducing it down as if you're watching like a cooking show, and you're reducing it down to get the most flavorful jus. That's what we want, where everything's earned its place. But it's okay if to begin with it's massive. We just need to make sure that we're whittling it down to be left with those golden nuggets that just when someone was reading that who knows you, they're like, yes, this is totally you, Amelia. And these are the types of conversations we've had in supervision. I see this is the way that you're developing. I like how your curious mind is like this, or I like how you're really, commenting on your own experiences with this, how you've grown, how you developed, how you've, changed, how, I think you say your second time. I know it can be really tempting to read your form now. Maybe don't. Maybe read it at the end just to check you've not missed anything. But it can almost be useful to think about how far you've come. And actually, your form should be entirely different to last year, because you should have 12 months worth of growth and development. So what I would say is be kind with yourself, but also hold yourself accountable a little bit. And of course, we've got the accountability sessions happening tomorrow between 6 and 8 p.m. on YouTube. I'm going to be sitting here in this very seat doing some work. So feel free to bring yourself along to work on your psychology application as well, because I really recognize it as an aspiring psych, maybe even now as well, that I need someone to hold me accountable to be able to get things done. And I'm aware that the application for the reduced fee is coming up. I think it's next week, the reduced fee disappears. So if actually you would really like to get your application done and get it at a slightly cheaper rate, then showing up for yourself and coming along to YouTube, Dr. Marianne Trent, between 6 and 8 tomorrow, getting 2 hours of solid work done, I promise you it will fly by as well. But yeah, even if you can't make the whole thing, you can just rock up at any time during that, or you can watch the replay as well, because sometimes, started is better than perfect. And for me, I was never really able to produce my best quality work as a bit of a last minute Larry, but I often found that I'd put myself in a position where that's what I had to do. I would say starting early gives you the time to make those reflections, to really, I think even from supervision session to supervision session, I find that I'm shaped, that I'm grown. Even when I listen to different podcast episodes, I'm like, oh, that's really helped something click into place there. So yeah, I would give yourself time, but also make a start and take that pressure off yourself is what I would say, Amelia. And Amelia says, I'm struggling to join up those dots. Oh, so you've got the dots in place, you're struggling to join them. Do bear in mind, I do offer one-to-one. And if you wanted to join the Aspiring Psychologist membership for 6 months in one go, you would get a free 30-minute one-to-one with me as well. If anyone wanted to join for 12 months up front, you get a free 60 minutes with me, or 2 lots of 30 minutes. So that's an option if you really feel that overwhelm. But if you're currently supervised by a ClinPsych, it's totally okay, or even an HCPC psych for that in that instance. It's totally okay to kind of say, is there any time that we could talk about my form, or could I show you my form, and kind of we'll have some conversations about kind of helping support my growth and development in that area. So there are options out there. But sorry to hear that you're feeling a bit like, it's all feeling a bit much. I don't know where to start. Anna says, thank you. That was such a kind, compassionate answer and brought tears to my eyes. I really appreciate it. Well, thank you, Anna. You do know your stuff. You know, if you've been in teaching for 20 years, you know, hats off to you. It is not easy. I've got one child in year 5, one child in year 8. It isn't easy. And even, you know, the kind of nature of teaching now is very different than it was 20 years ago when you first joined it, because it seems like, I don't know, like social media is around now. Kids are just different. You know, reflect on all of that. You know, talk about your why. And I appreciate that it's not easy to be not working, especially when you like, I know what it will have been like, Anna. You will have been like, I'm going to retrain, I'm going to do my master's, then I'm going to get on the doctorate. And it's like, hold on. You know, maybe someone didn't get this memo because I've done my master's now. I am retraining. I've already told everybody I'm retraining. I'm doing that thing. My teaching colleagues are all getting together for their Christmas do. I don't have any colleagues yet. Like, what is happening? You know, where's my spot on this bus? Because I'm sure I did book a ticket. It's really hard. Just be patient with yourself and know that whilst you've been doing all of your learning and your upskilling and your journey, there's been people also doing their own. And sometimes it is a first come, first served endeavor with applying for jobs, but it's really hard. You know, it might be that maybe if you need some money just right now, you could maybe do some tutoring if you can bring yourself to do that, you know, or thinking about other ways that you might be able to make money whilst holding out for a clinically relevant job. So ideally, we would want clinically relevant and supervised by an HCPC psych. That would be the golden standard, the gold ticket. But I know it's really hard to wait. And I don't know if you're a solo person, or if you've got other people in your life, if you've got a partner, those will all affect whether you are able to kind of hang on in there, or whether you need to kind of find something to pay the bills. Because of course, you know, none of this stuff, none of this light, none of this light comes for free. You know, the heating, food ain't free. It ain't free. Yes. So Anna says, yeah, you understand completely. Yeah, it's really hard. It's really hard. And it's almost like that stigma, or sometimes that shame of people who thought like, told you it wouldn't be easy, or, you know, you should have stayed where you were. You know, when you were a teacher, you had, you know, 10 weeks off a year and you had a solid job and you had career progression. And now it feels a bit like, oh God, I hope they weren't right. I hope they weren't right. And what I would say is they weren't right because you were right to think about nurturing that spark within yourself. You know, you deserve to thrive. And actually the decisions we make at earlier points of our career were maybe right for the person that you were at that particular time. So I made the decision when I was 18 to go off and do forensic science at uni. I don't know if that decision was ever right for me, really, but I made the best decision I could at that time with my headstrong character that I had at the time. But, you know, you maybe decided to become a teacher when you were 18. You stuck with that for 20 years, you know. That is a solid amount of time to stick with that decision. But you're no longer, you know, the sort of person, or you're no longer the person that made that decision. You know, you've had many different kind of genesis really of yourself, and you've kind of shed your little snake skin, and it just no longer fitted. And you know, you shouldn't have had to keep forcing yourself into that shoe or into that snake skin, because it didn't authentically feel like you anymore. And just because you haven't yet got a job which is, I don't know, maybe signifying to yourself, but signifying to others with a bit of external validation that this is happening, this is right for you, it doesn't mean that it won't happen or that it isn't right for you. It just means that you need to stay compassionate and be patient to yourself. Don't know if anybody has watched episode 200 or episode 201 of the Aspiring Psychologist podcast with Professor Paul Gilbert, but they are both completely beautiful, wonderful episodes. Episode 200 is kind of special for mental health professionals, is what I would say. It really is in keeping with the Aspiring Psych podcast, although it's for qualified members of staff as well. It's for anyone working in the mental health space. But episode 201 is more generic about how to use compassion, whoever you are. And I would really urge you, Anna, to listen or watch both of those episodes, because people are getting in contact with me to say, oh my days, this is really helpful. Thank you. So please do take some time to go along to YouTube and to watch those. It's just a privilege to watch Professor Paul as well and to hear his wisdom. So if you haven't watched those already, that is my next stop of advice for you. And then maybe keep your reflective journal out and reflect as you watch or as you listen. Because I think if you aren't having some reflections when you're, watching or listening to those episodes, I'm a little bit concerned because I found them fascinating. I've had so many points to consider and to act upon since during recording and since recording as well. Like, I know I'm a little biased, but I think it's pretty golden stuff. So yeah, I would love your thoughts. If anyone does watch, please do drop a like and a comment. Okay, I haven't got any questions coming through at the moment. If you are watching live, we haven't had anyone join us from YouTube, so I'm wondering if we are indeed live on YouTube. I think we are. I'm just going to double check that. I think it's only seems to be coming through. I can't even find my phone. Only seems to be coming through from LinkedIn. So I'm just going to check that we are indeed live on YouTube. I'll just turn this down so I don't suddenly scare myself. YouTube. Dr. Marianne Trent, view channel. Oh yeah, it does say live. Oh, I think it's working, but we usually have at least a few comments from YouTube. So yes, I can see myself looking down, so it is live. Okay, so yeah, let me know if you've got any questions. Okay, yes, it's totally okay, Anna. And Anna says, I will watch them. Please do, and I'd love to see your likes and your comments and anything that it does evoke for you. I hope it's okay to ask another question. Of course it is. I'm here. As you know, my thesis was on slow living and developing a scale, hopefully soon to be published. I feel like getting onto the doctorate is almost the opposite of what I learned. Oh no. And my results showed of the benefits of slow living. Would it work in my favour to say I work part-time this year to prioritise my psychological well-being and my family? 4 kids? Yes, 4 children. Wowzers. Yes, it would, because it's authentic. So yes, I absolutely think that is helpful. And yeah, we want you to be arriving as a trainee, genuinely ready to grasp these opportunities, not so burned out that you can't, you don't know where to begin. And it's really hard. I'm a mother of 2 children. It's really hard to be holding enough emotional availability that you're able to, primarily parent yourself, because we still need to do that, right? You've got to be able to be compassionate to yourself, but also, get up and brush your hair at least a few times a week, right? And, make hopefully nutritional choices that honor your own fitness and lifestyle goals, but be able to hold enough in reserve that you can be emotionally available, not just physically available for your kids. I don't know how old your kids are, but also as an older-ish woman myself, I'm 44, even starting HRT in the this last year, I started on the 1st of January, has very much increased my capacity and my devotion and my emotional availability, because I was starting to find everybody very irritating all of the time. And that was more about me than it was about them. They're still a bit irritating, but my capacity and tolerance for that has increased. And so actually, yeah, I do think it's really important that you do reflect on those and that you're able to be honest about that, because that's authentically you, Anna. And as I said at the start of this video, is that you do need to be making sure that your form is authentic to you. So if that wasn't on there, that would be, that would be concerning. But I'm interested in your experiences of being a mother and being an aspiring psych, and thinking about what it's like trying to raise children who are likely, if you've got 4 of the beasts, they're likely in the education system when you've previously worked in the education system and decided that you don't want no more to do with it. It's all interesting stuff to reflect on. What do they say? Grist for the mill. That's what someone used to say on training. One of my tutors, and I'd never heard that term before. And then after her, I heard it all the time. But yes, I think that's absolutely stuff to reflect on. So yeah, make sure that you keep that on there. I mean, of course, I think there is, at least one course that offers part-time. So if you are near that course, I think it's UEA, then you might well be able to continue your journey as a part-time clinical trainee psychologist. I think that would be 4.4 years as a part-time option, rather than 3 years full-time equivalent. But of course, you would need to, if you were applying for a full-time post, just even reflect in your own mind how you're going to be able to do that 5 days a week. Plus, there might well be some kind of study kind of to be done as well. In my experience, the deadlines were advertised in advance. I think often I had the whole 3 years deadlines, so I could try and build my life around them. But there are times, especially like if you've got a thesis to write, or you've got certain assignments that you've got to get done, there are times where you are going to need to be having a focus in kind of your trainee roles, as in your clinical placements, and where you've got to also kind of be doing assignment writing as well. And try to use your study days where you can, but sometimes I have to say I didn't really do it. But I didn't really do much work in the evenings or weekends because I tried to use my study leave. But when it was thesis, I certainly had to. But yeah, I didn't do that much, I have to say. But of course, if I'd had children, I absolutely probably would have had to have compartmentalized my times differently. So I would say don't go into it with blinkers on. Really think about how you would create, how you'd carve out this time. Begin to think about how would I tell, I'm going to tell the universe that I'm going to get on training this year. So how would I begin, or the next year or the year, whatever, how will I even begin to think about how will I get my children to school? If I've got to start placement at 9 and it's an hour away, like, just make peace with the universe so that it knows, you're ready for this. You're not just winging it, is what I would say, Anna, because you're likely to have way more plates spinning than someone who is young, free and single with no mini beasts to take care of, if that makes sense. So yeah, just reflect on all of that. Sounds good. Chloe, I'm honestly not sure where to start with my personal statement. I feel like I'm going around in circles trying to find the right thing to talk about. Do you have any tips? Chloe, if you watch back, I spoke about this earlier. There was some lovely advice that I gave to, I think it was Amelia. And it was basically get out your phone. And if you have WhatsApp, drop yourself some voice notes to answer the questions, but also to reflect upon your why, your values. Yeah. You could also consider joining the Aspiring Psychologist membership. We have what are called snippet sessions, where people submit chunks of their form, and you can also watch previous snippet sessions where you can really see how people are kind of grappling with their forms, and you can see from one session to another how how they are changing and how they're developing. So people have absolutely been able to get places on courses to get assistant roles by watching those snippet sessions. And we've got replays from the last 3 years. So if you wanted to dive into the membership, that would be a great place to do so. Tonight, we've got a live CBT skills and formulation session. That starts at 7:30 p.m. And then next week, a week today, we've got a snippets session with me, where I will be looking at your real chunks of your form if you submit them to me, and kind of tweaking it and optimizing it and saying, that don't make no sense. Let's think about that again. Or, yes, that's amazing. No changes, which does happen sometimes. Okay, so yes. It's also worth, I think, reflecting on, Chloe, which stage of your journey you're at. So when I really, really struggled, which was the first time I applied, it was because I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready. I think it was the first time I applied, I hadn't had any paid assistant psych work. I hadn't ever worked under a qualified psych. I wasn't ready. I didn't know enough about psychology. I didn't have enough clinical experience or clinically relevant experience. I just wasn't ready. And so, with our compassionate grown-up pants on, sometimes when we really, really don't know where to begin, it might be because actually we're stuck in our overwhelm. Maybe we're procrastinating, we're feeling maybe we're not good enough. There might be lots of things to reflect on. But one of the options might be because actually maybe it's not your time and maybe you're not quite ready for this next step yet. And sometimes that can be really disappointing, actually, to acknowledge. But sometimes it's really important, because actually what I wouldn't want for you or for anybody is to get on to clinical training and then feel like you are so massively out of your depth that you don't deserve to be there, or that you're going to burn out because you really can't keep up. It's a very demanding role. So yeah, this isn't to say that you're definitely not good enough, Chloe. Please don't say it to mean that I don't know you. But if we really don't know where to begin, it might be because actually we need to get out there and get at least another 12 months experience. So people sometimes are like, oh, I've just graduated this summer, or I graduated a year ago, so really I think it's time for me to be applying. And it's like, well, no, actually, it takes time. So I graduated when I was 21, and I started training when I was 27, I think. And it wasn't all, work. I went traveling around the world for 6 months, and I worked in various unrelated roles. I worked as a home carer, which isn't unrelated, and I loved it. I worked in Argos head office, which was in Milton Keynes at the time, and I worked in Milton Keynes Council as a physical health rehab kind of support worker to help people to live their lives independently in the community if they were physically disabled. So that was clinically relevant population, but I wasn't doing, clinically relevant work. So I wasn't under the support of a qualified psychologist. But yes, so it was, physically disabled adults. That is a clinically relevant population, but I wasn't doing specifically really, really relevant work, because I wasn't doing, neuropsych. I wasn't doing anxiety reduction, other than very basic stuff. I wasn't doing any CBT. I wasn't doing any kind of group work using psychological principles. Do you know what I mean? So if you're really struggling, it might be that you're maybe just not quite right yet. And that's okay. There's no shame in that. Sometimes it's really empowering, actually, to be able to say, you know what? I'm putting down this pencil case this year. I ain't going to get my little clipboard on the go. I'm not clicking go. I'm not going to waste that money on applying. I'm going to use in the next 12 months to really focus on my own personal growth and development and my professional growth and development, and then I'm going to decide if I am ready. And again, there's no shame if the answer is still no. Or it might be that actually the application comes more easily to you and you're like, well, yeah, I think I could be ready. But, then you might just chance an application. But it might be that the year after that, maybe, when you're like, I know I'm ready and I know it's my time and I know I'm ready for this next step, that might be the year that you are really, truly ready and where you can more easily rise to the challenge. What we want to, it's making me think about when I was watching my kids at swimming lessons the other day, and there was like the edge of the pool, and then there was one of those big floats, the really big fun ones, like big ones like the size of a double bed, and they were lining those up against the pool and literally just kind of walking, just stepping onto water basically, rather than having to take a run up and a jump and hope that you balance right. We want that to be almost that easy for you, that you're like, I'm confident this is right for me. It's my time. I'm ready for this next step, and you can just walk forward and take it and float, rather than sink like a stone. So that is what I would say, Chloe, and anybody that's listening to this as well. I will come back to you, Chloe. I know you've dropped something else in there. Anna, thank you so much. Yes, Lancaster is my closest uni and they offer part-time. So I'm applying for that route. Amazing. So it might be really great to reflect on that. But of course, if you're also applying for courses that don't offer part-time, actually, maybe I think it was Lancaster that do it. And I think UEA were consulting people about whether people thought that would be helpful. So yes, you're right there. I did ask Lancaster if they'd be happy to talk with me for the podcast, but they said no. So yeah, I'm quite sad about that because I think it would have been a really interesting conversation to have. Okay, we've got I don't have anything published. Is there anything else I can put for that section? So in the Aspiring Psychologist membership, we have a couple of sessions around increasing your dissemination and how to put research on the form. What I would say is we need to be creative about what we're thinking about, because it's publications and disseminations. Don't forget, it isn't all publications. So do think about what other things exist in the world or you have done in the world that evidences how you have communicated psychology. And don't forget that if you've done undergraduate dissertation, and if you've done any master's thesis or kind of pieces of research, they should be in that chunk of your form as well. So if you're looking for inspiration, please do dive in to the Aspiring Psychologist membership, because research is a part of the membership that we do incredibly well. Chloe, I've been thinking about that, and I think I find it difficult because I doubt myself and my abilities when often it's not warranted. I have some experience as an AP and now in primary care. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So again, useful stuff to reflect on, right? How is it that you may be less narcissistic, you may be experiencing more of an imposter syndrome than someone else in your position might be experiencing? It's all useful stuff to reflect on and will hopefully lead to some really important reflections for you as well. But yeah, if you would welcome any kind of one-to-one time with me or even time in the membership, I think it might be really helpful, Chloe, to help you to lift up that head. And to begin to step into those shoes and to know that actually they're your shoes. You've not taken them from anybody else. And maybe it is your time, but you need to be able to sit more comfortably with that and kind of try and settle down any distress that you might be having about this stage of your career. Chloe, I think no matter what, I'll have some doubt in my head about it, more because I feel like I'll not be good enough. Ironic, as I conducted research on imposter phenomenon. Okay, well, don't we all have that anyway? Don't I sit here and think, oh, who am I to be telling you this? Or even in the conversations I'm having with Professor Paul Gilbert, I'm like, oh, who am I to be talking to Professor Paul Gilbert? And I was on the radio the other day and I was talking about but not to President Trump. And I was like, oh no, I'm not a proper grown-up enough to be having a conversation about President Trump. But we have to be able to think that maybe we're the best person to be doing that job at any one time. And as Professor Paul Gilbert said in the podcast episode, we're all doing the best that we can do right now. No one's setting out to be terrible at their job. They're usually doing the best they can do right now, but of course bearing in mind that we might have diminishing resources at any given time as well. Maybe we're struggling with our own health, or worried about our parents' health, or we are just feeling like we're stressed, or we're depressed, or we're grieving, and so at any one time we're doing our best with that unique set of circumstances that we've got going on. So hopefully lots to reflect on there, Chloe. All right, we are reaching the end of our planned time for today. Have you got any thoughts before we draw this session to a close? Please do remember we've got the accountability session happening for 2 hours from 6 p.m. till 8 p.m. tomorrow on YouTube, where literally I will be doing some work of my own on camera, and you will be joining to sit down and do either some psychology work for your degree or your master's, or to start your form, or to kind of work more on your form, or to use your reflective journal. Anything you recognize that actually you could do with a little bit of structured accountability, then you are welcome to come along and do it with us. Has this session been helpful? If it has, I would love it if you would drop a comment, let me know what your feedback is, drop a like. If you're watching on YouTube, please do subscribe to the channel if you don't already, as it helps me to kind of understand and know that this content is useful and that it's hitting the right mark for where you are at. What have we got coming up in the podcast? Shall I do you a little bit of an exclusive reveal? Let me look at my diary whilst I just wait to see if anyone's got any closing thoughts. So today is episode 201 with Professor Paul Gilbert. Next week we've got a special on baby loss awareness. That's with my friend and colleague, Dr. Cara. And then we've got a very interesting episode on someone who's turned down a place on the doctorate in clinical psychology. And it's a bit of a deep dive into their why. And it's an incredible episode. That's episode 203. And then we've got a very interesting session on male rape. We're speaking to a survivor, and we're thinking about the taboos that exist in that, and how we can kind of help empower people to be able to kind of think about accessing support or healing themselves psychologically. And then we've got a session on water and swimming and babies and attachment and attunement and early development relationships. It's really, really lovely session. And then we've got a session on retraining later in life, when you've already had a very successful career, and then you're like, I think I want me a bit of this psychology. That's episode 206. And then 207 I have recorded today, and we're looking at whether the justice system is fit for purpose and whether it really does what we think it does. So if you are listening, if you're looking forward to any of those episodes, I would love it if you'd let me know in the comments, even if you're watching on replay. If you've got any ideas for future episodes of the Aspiring Psychologist podcast, I would love it if you would let me know. Anna says, I had some really good advice from my mentor for the ClinPsy doctorate, really, regarding publication section of the application form. She suggested submitting my thesis abstract to a BPS conference, as that gives you a publication link you can put in your application. I just heard during this call I've been accepted to the division of Psych annual conference for a poster. Amazing. Yes, absolutely. So any time that you've had your poster appear somewhere, then that counts as a dissemination. Absolutely. And Anna says, thank you for all your presence and advice today. It's exactly the encouragement I needed. Well, I am so pleased to hear it. And if you've got any questions, if you need anything in future, do let me know. And do please bear in mind that if you like the way that I work, this is the free stuff. Just think how great the paid stuff is as well. But that said, you're never obliged to pay me a penny. You never have to buy a book. You never have to, join the membership. You never have to have any one-to-one time. You can just keep being the biggest fan of the podcast and rocking up to these sessions and to the accountability sessions too, because I passionately believe that psychology should be accessible, even if you don't personally know any qualified psychologist. So that's why I do what I do. And when I was an aspiring psych, I would have been my own biggest fan on the podcast. Because I just think, I don't know, I just love these very interesting conversations that I get to have. But thank you so much for joining me. Like I said, even if you're watching on replay, please do drop me a comment in, and I'll do my best to continue to reply to comments wherever you're watching. It's really lovely creating these sessions for you. This is the final session of this application cycle, but I will look forward to seeing you for future application cycles. And please do bear in mind the Aspiring Psychologist membership, or if you're ready for a little bit more one-to-one, the Ready to Rise program. Thank you so much for being part of my world. Do hope you found it helpful, and I'll see you again soon. Take care.